Hello and welcome back to State of the Division. This time we come to you with UFC 286. This features a really interesting title rematch, I want to call it, where at the last second Edwards came back and knocked out Kamaru Usman. Now Usman's coming back and he wants his belt. It's an interesting fight. We got Gaethje Fiziev on this main card as well. That's a fun fight. Vettori's fighting again. That'll be interesting. I think we have some prospects on this early card, but overall, it seems like a mostly interesting card. That being said, as always, let's jump right in with the early prelims. Starting us off, 3-1, Juliana Killer Miller looks to go 2-0 in the UFC against the 6-4-1 Veronica Macedo. I think I said that right. 1 year in age for Miller, as well as 4 or 3 inches of height, because Sherdog and UFC can't agree, but only 2 in reach. Now, I don't got much in terms of numbers for Miller, but as a whole, she seems to be more so a ground and pound fighter. UFC debut, she had 4 takedowns for 9-ish minutes of ground control, with nearly 46% of her strikes that fight coming from the ground. So far, she's been a finisher with 2 submissions and 1 KO win in the UFC. Now, Macedo has 1 UFC win in her 5 fights and seems to be a bit of a ground-focused grinder with 3 of her 6 total wins coming by decision and 2 by submission. It's worth noting she has been beat on both the ground and the feet in the UFC. Now, Vegas likes Miller, and I'm going to agree. Miller's the hot hand. Macedo's been struggling, and it doesn't seem like Macedo will be able to surpass Miller anywhere in this fight. Macedo's been overcome in the ground, been overcome on the feet, and it seems like those are 2 places that Miller, at least at this moment, looks strong in. 12-4, Jai, the Black Country Banger Herbert, what the hell, steps in with 19-4, Mr. Highlight, Ludovic Klein. 6 years in favor of Klein, but he does give up either 6 or 7 inches in height and 5 in reach. Black Country Banger hasn't had the best time in the UFC, but as a whole so far seems like a striker through and through. He rocks a 245 to 285 and a 0% takedown average, looking like a heavyweight there. In his losses, the striking totals are close, and he does have 9 KO wins in his career. However, he does have a tendency to get knocked out with this style, since 2 of his 3 UFC losses have come by KO. Klein is a bit different. He rocks a 351 to 387 striking in addition to 1.02 takedown average. He comes across more so as a grinder in UFC with 2 of his 3 wins coming by decision. Outside the UFC, he seemed more of a finisher with 8 KOs and 8 submissions. So those certainly are threats in the fight, even if they haven't shown up all that much in the UFC. Now, Vegas likes Klein. I'm going to agree. Part of me wants to pick the Black Country Banger here, but Klein has the takedown game in this fight. He outputs higher on striking. He has a bad height advantage, but we've seen that be overcome in other weight divisions. So as of now, I'm going to pick Klein here. I feel like if Herbert could win this, I just think as of right now with those numbers, I'm going to pick Klein. 15-8, Joanne JoJo Wood tries to stop the skid against 8-3 Luana Dread Carolina, who wins dumbest ring name of the night. Carolina is 8 years younger, inch or none taller, but she does take 4 in reach. Wood's a bit hot and cold, but overall seems like a grinder capable of stacking the striking with a 6.76 to 4.54 and 5 career KO wins. She does have a takedown average of 1.53, but last had a takedown in 2021. Her striking is her strength, and very rarely is she outstruck in her fights. Her ground game is open to submissions, however, with her 2 most recent losses coming via submission. Carolina doesn't have as high of a striking output with a 4.64 to 3.55, but does do enough to win. She's one of those types of fighters. Doesn't shoot the takedowns really at all, but is capable of taking control and getting ground control time to help her get to the end of a fight and win by decision. Now, the favorite here is Wood, and I'm going to be boring again and agree. Neither fighter really shoots the ground all that much, and on the feet, I'm going to give the edge to Woods here. If it goes to the ground, I'm thinking of changing it, but neither fighter seems to shoot takedowns all that much, so it seems like it'll stay on the feet. 9-1, Jake White Kong Hadley, I don't understand, tries to get a streak going against 14-6 Malcolm X Gordon. 6 years of age for Hadley, dead even with height with an inch of reach going to Gordon. Now, Hadley seems like a ground-focused submission-based fighter. 5 career submission wins and 2 in the UFC. Doesn't seem to be the one to shoot many takedowns, but is capable of reversing positions or playing off the back. Striking isn't anything to write home about, but it works with a 402 to 354. Gordon's more of a finisher, but that all appeared outside the UFC. Inside the UFC, he has struggled. He rocks a 1.90 to 2.04 in striking and has a 1.66 takedown average. Though it is worth noting, none of that has been all that effective in the UFC. He has a tendency to get taken down repeatedly, and in fights, he also can be submitted by other ground fighters. He doesn't seem to excel in really any area at this moment. Vegas likes Hadley. I'm going to agree. Gordon seems to be struggling, and with how poor his striking is, I'm going to give the edge to Hadley. I feel like if it goes to the ground, it'll be closer. But with the fighters being the way they are, I like Hadley's edge. Newcomer, 7-0, Christian CLD Duncan, the CLD standing for Christian Leroy Duncan, looks to stay perfect against 12-3 Dusko Thunder Todorovic. Duncan is a year younger, an inch taller, with 5 inches of reach going his way. Now, Duncan seems very much like a striker with 5 career KO wins in addition to 1 each of submission and decision. He seems to be very dynamic, a wide variety of spinning finishes, and a flying knee mixed in there. Todorovic is a striker as well, rocking a 5.64 to 4.54, and while he does have a .99 takedown game, it isn't common enough to really be considered part of a regular plan, I feel like. Seems to run with power decently, but that always seems to come in late rounds. Vegas likes Duncan, and honestly, this feels like a complete toss-up. Todorovic is the veteran, so he has the experience, if you will, but he has struggled in fights with other strikers, which makes me give the edge to Duncan. So I'm going to trust Vegas here and go with the newcomer CLD. Ending off our early prelims, 11-0-1. Lerone the Miracle Murphy takes on 10-0 Gabriel Mosquitino, I think I said that right, Santos. Santos is 5 years younger, even height, but Murphy does take 3 in reach. Murphy is a decently rounded fighter who does tend to lean into the striking game and to use power as that major threat. Backing up with power is a striking percentage of 2.58 to 1.90, takedown average of 0.76. As you can see, it's not all that important. It does seem to be a weakness, however, because he got taken down 5 times in his last fight, and that only ended 14 seconds into the second. Santos is a newcomer, but seems to also be a finisher with a solid ground game. 3 KO with 4 submission wins. Seems to hint at a ground game of some capacity, but I don't know about takedowns. Murphy's the narrow favorite, and I'm going to agree. Yes, he has gotten taken down a bunch of times, but he was able to get up off the ground and do what he needed to get to the feet. His ability to recover is what gives him the edge in my mind against a newcomer like Santos. On to the prelims. 9-0-0-1, Mohamed the Punisher, Mokaev, takes the stage against 14-2, Rafael Pastor Filho. I've said that wrong. Mokaev is 7 years younger at 22, either 2 or none inches taller, because they can't agree, and 2 inches in reach. Mokaev is far and away a ground-focused fighter. Got a 1.15 to 0.99 striking, which is odd until you look at the takedown average, 8.88. Of his 3 UFC fights, the only one he didn't have a takedown, he actually managed to finish with a guillotine choke. But he's incredibly aggressive with the takedowns and dangerous with submissions, with 4 in his career. Filho also seems to be a ground-focused fighter with 8 submission wins and 2 takedowns in his Contender Series win. Vegas runs with Mokaev, and I agree. Does Filho have a chance? Yeah. But the high-octane takedowns of Mokaev give him the edge in my mind, and the slight edge of experience he has makes him stand out to me. 10-1-1. Sam, the Future Patterson, not to be confused with Ian, the Future Gary, tries to win his official debut against 6-0, Yanal Red Fox Ashimov. Patterson is 1 year younger, either 5 or 6 inches taller, but does take 10 inches in reach. Patterson looks to be a bit all over the place in terms of stats. He has 4 KO wins, 5 submission, and 1 decision to make it a pretty confusing picture. I will say in his Contender Series win, he was able to gain 3 minutes of ground control despite not securing a takedown. And Ashimov is similar in all honesty, but he seems to lean a bit more toward the striking side of things with 3 career KO wins. And that's all I got. Favorite is Patterson, and I'm going to agree because I have very little to go off of here. 9-1. Chris, the Problem Duncan, takes on 11-3 Omar, Venezuelan fighter Morales. Duncan is 8 years younger, either 1 inch shorter or taller. Can't make up their minds, but definitely loses 2 in reach. Duncan is a finisher who lives on the feet with 7 career KO wins. His 2 Contender Series fights, a loss and a win, left him with a 7.10 to a 7.94 in striking. He has shot a few takedowns, but doesn't seem to come up much. Morales is almost the complete opposite, with 5 submission wins, that focus on the ground game. He works with a 3.47 to 3.12 in striking, which happens to show up more in a grinding style of fighting. He also does have a 0.54 takedown average, which comes up more so from his losses with the takedowns. Duncan is the narrow favorite, and I mean narrow. In the end, I'm going to be boring, and I'm going to agree with Vegas again. Duncan's raw, yes. With how few takedowns Morales ends up with, the fight's likely going to be on the feet, where I think Duncan takes that edge. Ending off the prelims, finally. 16-1, Jack Tank Shore squares off against 17-8, Makwan, Mr. Finland, Amirkhani. Shore is 6 years younger, 1 or 2 inches shorter, and a definite inch shorter in reach. Shore is a ground-focused fighter, seems to be a bit of a grinder. He's a 3.96 to 2.34 in striking, which serves him well enough to back up a 3.66 takedown average. He does have a submission game, but he hasn't secured one in his last 4 fights, so maybe it's still effective. He also tends to be the one doing the takedowns, not the one to play off the back. See his Ricky Simon fight. Amirkhani has been struggling as of late, but overall seems to be another heavy takedown fighter with a 4.15 average on the takedowns. His striking is bad with a 135 to 298, and he will get severely outstruck in his fights. He can play off the back a little, but that doesn't seem to be his ultimate wheelhouse. Now, Vegas likes Shore, and I'm going to agree. Yeah, Amirkhani shoots a lot of takedowns, but in the Leroy Murphy fight, he got knocked out in the second round after getting 5. I think Shore can shoot as well. In addition to the 80% striking defense, I think that gives him the slight edge in keeping it where he wants to be, which is likely going to be on the feet. On to the main card. 18-6-1. Marvin Italian Dream Vettori goes against 12-1. Roman the Caucasian Dolidze. Vettori is 5 years younger, 3 or 2 inches shorter, and loses 2 in reach. Vettori's a bit of a grinder. He has a takedown average of 1.89, backed up with a striking average of 4.20 to 3.58. Now, looking at his fights, he tends to take that heavy striking lead, but there are almost always takedowns in that same fight. I will say in straight striking, he isn't the greatest, as there are times that he gets outstruck, and without takedowns, he seems to struggle a lot more. Dolidze is a different bird despite the similar stats. He rocks a 2.62 to 2.06 in striking, but consistently calls on more power than Vettori does in that regard. He does have a decent takedown average, but it reads as much more of a game plan or matchup technique over this consistent presence like in Vettori's game. Now, Vettori is the favorite, I'm going to agree. Vettori has the experience, and despite the difference in power, Vettori's good at surviving and controlling, or at least keeping it close enough to give him the win in the end. Do I think Dolidze could win? Yeah. Do I think he will win? Not this fight. 29-1, Jennifer Maia faces off with 9-0, Casey King O'Neal. O'Neal is 9 years younger, 2 inches taller, and does take 5 in reach. Maia has been a bit hot and cold, but overall has seemed like a standing type of grinder. She rocks a 3.98 to 4.35, but in her wins, she takes the striking lead by a decent margin. She does have some good ground game, doesn't have a tendency to shoot takedowns, and tends to get taken down. Not great. O'Neal is different. She looks to be a bit more rounded overall, but absolutely monstrous in the striking. An 8.65 to a 4.68, proving that soundly. Plus a decent 2.59 takedown average. She also has a finishing touch for both KOs and submissions. Near our favorites, O'Neal, and I agree. Maia's the veteran and skilled, but she's also low in takedown averages, and in that regard, I think that's O'Neal dictating where the fight's going to be, whether it goes to the ground or stays on the feet. And if it stays on the feet, I think O'Neal has the edge and has that KO touch as of right now. 18-5-1, Gunny Nelson tries to build a streak against 18-9, Brian Bam Bam Barberena. Barberena is a year younger, an inch taller, and even dead even across reach. Nelson is iffy, that's putting it nicely, but as a fighter, he rocks a 1.83 to 3.05 in striking, Jesus, and only has a 1.86 for his takedown average. Now, he seems like a grinder who tends just to wrestle you for ground control and not much else. Does have submissions, but his last one was in 2018. And Barberena is a fighter that just seems to win fights. To actually talk about it, not just complain about it, he has a 5.92 to 4.90 in striking and a negligible takedown average, 0.16. On that note, he tends to outstrike his opponents in wins, but also gets taken down a bunch. He does survive the takedowns, and then will just get up and continue the striking grind. But it's worth noting that he does get taken down a bunch. Vegas likes Nelson for completely biased reasons. I'm picking Barberena. On paper, Nelson is more dangerous for Barberena, but he is good at just winning fights even though it looks like he's losing. See the Matt Brown fight where some of the video in this was taken. For the co-main event, 23-4, Justin the Highlight Gaethje goes to war against 12-1, Rafael Adaman Fiziev. Fiziev is 4 years younger, 3 inches shorter, and somehow steals 1 in reach. Gaethje is Gaethje, basically meaning he's a walking slugfest with a high pace. Rocked a 7.46 to 7.85 and finishing power with that high pace. Striking is rock solid in technique and always tends to let him get the lead in that category. His leg kicks are always dangerous, his punches are always dangerous, the elbows tend to get mixed in there eventually. He doesn't ever shoot takedowns, but is decent at defending them. That being said, with some fighters, it is in fact a weakness. Fiziev is similar, if not as well punched. 4.81 to a 4.86 in striking, with KO power lurking in the wings. His striking seems to be less of the standing with the leg kicks mixed in. It's much more varied with KO coming from kicks, KOs coming from other things and such. Vegas picked Fiziev, and in my script, I didn't actually write down what I wanted because I'm very torn here. And as of this moment, I'm going to deviate and say Gaethje. I think Gaethje knows he's on his way out the door. I think he wants to put on a show. And while Fiziev can match him, I just have a inkling of a suspicion or a complete blatant favoritism, for being honest, for Gaethje in this fight. And for the main event and a rematch, 23-0-1, Leon Rocky Edwards defends his belt against 20-2 Kamaru, the Nigerian Nightmare, Usman. Edwards is 4 years younger, 2 or 9 inches taller, but Usman steals 2 in reach. Edwards is a decently rounded fighter who makes use of his takedown game and solid striking to control his opponents to get the win. He rocks a 2.59 to 2.28 in striking with a 1.39 takedowns averaged. He tends to stack those takedowns when he gets them, and rarely is he beat in that category. However, Usman's a dominator. He's a 4.55 to 2.46 in striking, backing up a 3.01 takedown average with great ground control. Usman's able to fight either way he wants to. He can stand and have the slugfest, he can put you on the ground and just control you for points. He's been through wars on the feet where he still came out on top against good striking. Additionally, Usman's also got power. We're lurking in the wings, ready to put you away if he gets the chance. Vegas, to no one's surprise, is picking Usman, and this is not a slight against Edwards. But Usman was winning that last fight until a sudden head kick separated his soul from his body. Edwards could definitely change his game plan, could definitely come into this fight differently, but based on what we've seen, I think Usman is the better fighter. If he keeps his head about him, I think he can win this fight. It might not be exciting, but it'll be a win. And I think Edwards is the one that has to come into this fight looking to change a game plan and attack it differently other than Usman. That being said, that's kind of an overview of UFC 286. Go ahead and leave your opinions in the comments, who you think's going to be right, what you think I got wrong. Tell me what you'd want to see going forward and other stuff you might like me to cover. I am working on something else for the UFC, taking a look at more divisional stuff, and I am working on some football stuff, mostly bitching about the Cleveland Browns. But I hope you liked the video. See you next time.